a question that has come in, and this question is from Malaysia.
Okay.
Sister Mary John, they ask, you mentioned the proper teachings of religion in predominantly Catholic Philippines. What
Yes.
role does the Blessed Virgin play in women's conception of themselves? If religion is taught properly, can the Blessed Virgin be a figure of empowerment?
For me, the Blessed Virgin Mary is the shining aspect of the Catholic Church, because I have to say, as a Catholic, and I have the right to do that because I'm a member of the church. It is one of the most hierarchical, patriarchal religion. I have to say that. And sometimes when people tell me, you are always criticizing the church for this, for that, why don't you get out of the church? No, I said, I'm not going to get out of the church. It's my mother. I love my mother, but sometimes I'm not pleased with her. I said, I get irritated with my own mother. Why? Because she has also traits that I don't like. No, so it doesn't mean I don't love my mother. But if I see what's in her face, I have to tell that these are what's in your face. And really, for me, the greatest thing that I would like our Catholic Church to do is to really take seriously the equality of men and women, because it is not equal in the Catholic Church. As I said, the Blessed Virgin Mary at least brings the role of the woman very much in the forefront of devotion and piety. That's why the Blessed Virgin Mary is, for me, the saving aspect of the misogynistic church that I belong to. You know, and for me, we have, because now we have a synodality, no? We have now what they call synodality. That means to say they are going to listen to the periphery and all that. I said to the women, you better talk. I said, we better talk and tell them exactly what we think, that we are really not considered equal to them. We are not in the decision-making, what do you call that? What do you call this? The decision-making bodies. No, we have to say that. No, although actually we have more influence among the poor people because we are with them. The priests and the bishops are done in their palaces and all that. But we, the Catholic nuns, we are with the people. We are with the poor, and that is why we can influence them, even if we are not in the decision-making bodies of the church. So the Blessed Virgin Mary, I'm telling you, she is the saving factor in the Catholic Church.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Sister Mary John. I wish we could go into a real deep dive when it comes to the Q&A session, but seeing as in we are rather short of time, I feel that I will perhaps go with one main question, which I hope that each one of you could perhaps contribute to with your insights, your perspectives, coming with what you also presented on Sister Mary John, Dr. Fatima, as well as Dr. Tamara. I really wanted to ask this one anchoring question. Do you feel that what does it really boil down to when it comes to achieving women's empowerment from a policy-making angle? Should we truly be looking at, in each of our individual and very diverse Southeast Asian countries, towards women's political empowerment? Is that where the answer lies to all of this, everything that we've discussed, all the way from period poverty to feminization of labor to all the issues in the Philippines with regards to sex trafficking, domestic violence, and other issues? Does it all hinge around having more female policymakers in the corridors of power? Can I ask Sister Mary John perhaps to go first?
Political empowerment would be
Yes.
no, I say no. The
All
first
right,
thing
sure.
is personal empowerment. We have had 2 presidents, women presidents in the Philippines. That is the highest political empowerment. Did they do enough for women? No. Why? Because they did not have a woman consciousness. They do not have the understanding of the dynamics of women oppression, etc. So for me, the very first thing is first a real consciousness raising with the women themselves, that they have to understand their socialization process, and that they understand the dynamics of oppression and exploitation, etc. Only then, when they have already a personal, psychological, whatever empowerment, then you can go to economic empowerment, but if you begin with political empowerment, you reach nothing. I have said that because I have had 2 women presidents, and one of them is even from our school, no? But they did not have a woman consciousness. So did they do? Well, of course, the Cory Aquino did say the March is a women's month. Okay, that's already something. And had a 5%, what they call that, 5% of all the budgets of political organizations should be used for women. That's already something. But other than that, because there is no real understanding of what underlies women's inequality, women's oppression, they go as far as that, okay? But that's why for me, it's so important, this consciousness raising, so that each woman should first understand her own dynamics, her own socialization. For me, that is the most important, personal empowerment, which means psychological, spiritual, whatever, but it should be personal first. And then only you can become an instrument of empowerment of all women and of the whole society. That is my stand.
Sure. Thank you so much for that, Sister Mary John. I think you make a really insightful analysis, particularly considering Philippines' very unique political landscape, where, as you said, 2 female presidents and yet no monumental societal change. Only the good work that organizations like Gabriela and others have been doing. Yes.
You are right.
I'd now like to move on to Dr. Fatima Latas with the same question, and perhaps your perspectives on, do you feel it should anchor around increasing women's representation in politics and policy making, and that is a way to get around a host of the social issues we have, including, of course, period poverty?
I really resonate with what Sister Mary was saying about how sometimes even when we have political representation, or if we have women on board, without clear ideas about where the systematic problems are. And I think we need to also consider how our identities may be impacting our understanding of the system, you know, the intersectionality of our identities, whether or not we're very privileged women from particular socioeconomic groups, and understanding issues like period poverty. Even, for example, we may experience menstruation, but we've never had to, count how many sanitary pads we've had. So we won't even consider to think that that's a problem for anyone. So that's also important in understanding that system. So I really resonate with Sister Mary on that. And I think having political will is also really important, you know, when given the position, whether we are ready to take on those positions and to make things right where they're supposed to be. That would be also something that's important. And then I think in Malaysia in particular, we don't want to have this token kind of culture where women are just placed there, so that there's like a face of a woman there, and women themselves take on the role of being a token that, you know, I'm representing women, but there's no clear understanding of what that looks like and what are the concerns of different women and the diversity of women in our society. So I think just highlighting those things would be something that I'd like to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Dr. Fatima. And Dr. Tamara, I wanted to ask you a similar question, but one with a slight tangent, particularly because, of course, your presentation focused a lot on the biopolitics of power, female labor in particular. So is there a way, because we're speaking here about women's rights, is there a way to decouple women's human rights from the economic utility aspect of things, especially in Southeast Asian societies? Because generally, and that is also the way in which I anchor my arguments as a feminist broadcast journalist, I always look at the economic aspect, at the economic gains, at the losses, particularly in a COVID perspective, which Malaysia is going to suffer inevitably if we don't work towards gender equality. But is there a way to still advocate for women's full human rights outside of just the economic question of utility?
Thank you for that question. Absolutely. And you should. It shouldn't just be about economic rights or economic security. It should be about, let me just go off tangent for a minute to address the comments of Sister Mary John and Dr. Fatima. Agree wholeheartedly with them. that political empowerment is not the only thing that's necessary. If you even look at the female political leaders, what is their agenda or platform they have come up on? It's not anything related to women or women's rights or equality of not only women, but just the idea of equality or even social issues for that matter. It has always been hardcore national security issues, whether it's economics, whether it's whatever it might be, but it's not what we call softer issues, right? So and also the idea of proxy representation. You have a female, but who's pulling the strings? And are you representing women, or are you representing people in power, right? So as far as I think political empowerment is still very important, but like Sister Mary John has said, you need to have different levels, and that is one of the levels. But before that, you really need to empower yourselves and what you want to do, and inform yourselves about what the issue is. And then your platform, and then within your platform, do you want to look at, which comes to your question, do you want to look at an economic perspective, a social perspective, a social cultural perspective, or even a religious perspective for that matter, right? Because the violation of rights happens in any one of those spheres: political, social, environmental, economic, any one of those spheres. So even before you can go into become a politically empowered person, you have to be a well-informed person, and then an empowered person, and then an informed person, and then you bring those mandates with you, your agenda, and then you sort of you empower yourself in that sense. So all across our countries, right, there is no country that denies women political participation rights. Do we have it? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. So, but even before that, like Sister Mary was saying, and Fatima was saying as well, let's get informed, let's get empowered ourselves, let's build capacity within and abilities within ourselves and the groups that we are within before we move up to the next step. Then we are better positioned to actually ask for what we want and what we need, or rather demand what we want and what we need. So that's my comment on this, which I very much agree.
Sure.
Thank you so much for saying that to both of my colleagues who have spoken. Coming to your comment, yeah, definitely not. Of course, like I said, there are many ways to realize women's rights. And I firmly look at the human security framework. It's very simple: freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom from indignities. Any arena you are in should provide you these three freedoms. Basic. And that is the foundation of what we mean by human security in the Human Development Report in 1994. That's what they talked about. In the economic sphere, are you accorded these three freedoms? Like decent work. The concept of decent work is freedom from, the concept of the, glass ceiling, that's not freedom from, want and indignities in that sense. So if you go in the social sphere, right? If you go into the social sphere, once again, freedom from fear, freedom from, like digital security. I should not be afraid to be online and give anyone my opinion. That I should have that freedom from fear from doing that. Unfortunately, no, that's not the case. Women are more likely to be abused online than women, like you yourself have said earlier. And the attacks on women are very gendered, are very specific, when compared to the attacks on men, which tend to be broader and more about issues or what they have said on a particular issue or whatever. But on women, it tends to be, you're dressed like this, what do you know? Your hair is like that, whatever. Very, like Sister Mary, you talked about Maria Reza, right? So Reza, yes, I was in a webinar. I was lucky enough to be in a webinar with her about digital security, about women and digital security. And she talked about the violation of her rights and her freedom of speech by just people putting extremely sexist remarks and using her face superimposed with, and I apologize for my language and presenting you with this image, but with the male scrotum with her face. And those things are really disgusting and terrible. And why would you, for one, you might not like what she's saying, yes, but your anger is sort of magnified because she is female. So, in each one of those different arenas, you should have those three freedoms. These three freedoms should be protected, not only for women, for everyone, for children, for marginalized community, for men as well, because men, and I think Sister Mary, you said this as well, they are also victims of this socialization. It's not they are also victims of patriarchy. We must remember, is not all men, it's a few powerful men,
Yes,
who assert their power on the majority of us. So it's not just all men, because men also turn out to be victims in that sense. I hope I've answered your question was that what you were looking for?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I think that was a very interesting approach to answer the question, Dr. Tamara. Thank you so much, because of course, when it boils down to it, it is about human security, and women are definitely not exempt from that unalienable right.
Yep.
On that note, thank you so much once again to Sister Mary John, to Dr. Fatima, Dr. Tamara for joining us and for being so generous with your insights as well as perspectives. It's been an absolute pleasure presenting the keynote and moderating this masterclass on feminism, policy, and women's empowerment in Southeast Asia. To end with, I feel it's particularly poignant that we're holding this talk within the 16 days of activism, drawing from, of course, the annual International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, IDIVAL 2021. So each one of us has, of course, shared perspectives and insights on different forms of violence, which individually and collectively impact women's lives around Southeast Asia. Women also make up roughly 50% of Southeast Asia's population. Leaving behind half the population is never an option when it comes to gender equality, progress, and yes, even pandemic recovery and national development. Denying women their full humanity should never be the question, but a constant work in progress with major stakeholders from government, civil society, education, religion, and media, partnering towards equitable opportunity for all women and girls. Our arguments are compelling. Thoughtful questions from our audience as well truly help anchor the discussion. And as we move closer to the end of the 16 days of activism and Human Rights Day on 10th December, I would like to emphasize women's rights are human rights. I'm Samina Kausji, and on that note, I hand over the floor